With working with audio or MIDI, you may want to change the timescale or rulers that you're viewing. We can do that really three different ways. We can come up here and there's this disclosure triangle to the right of the counter. We can click on it and choose the ruler that we want to have enabled. When we do that, essentially it will highlight down here in gray the ruler that's being used. So you can see whenever I'm clicking on these, it's changing this as well as changing the information in the rulers. So that's how you can change the rulers. You can also have a sub counter, which is very helpful, as I mentioned I think before, especially when you're working on a time-based piece of music. So this will give you your beats and bars, and this will give you your time location, how many seconds, especially if you're working on a piece like a 30, a 60, or a 15-second piece for a promotional piece of music. The third way to change the rulers is under the View menu, Main Counter, and you can select which particular ruler you would like to have viewed. So one way clicking here, one way clicking here, and one way to come up here to the main counter and change your rulers that way. When looking at beats and bars, it's important to know what each of these particular areas is referring to. So this is the bar that you're in, this is the beat. In this case, I'm in 4/4 time, so there will be 4 beats per bar. And then this is ticks. And in Pro Tools, there are 960 ticks per quarter note. So you can easily see here, if I go like 4/2, 480, that's going to tell you I'm in bar 4, I'm on beat 2, and I'm halfway through. So it's basically the and of 2 of measure 4 is where I'm at. You may also need to change the tempo, the meter, or the key signature rulers. And again, to make those visible, we can come up here and come down to the edit window, which is where we're at, and rulers. And then right down here, you can see below this line is all of your music-related rulers. Above this line is all your time-based rulers. So here you could select meter and maybe key signature, and you've got all these additional rulers now visible as well. You can add a meter change real easily by just coming down here and clicking on this plus button in the meter ruler. It'll open up the meter change dialog box, and it'll give you a few options. Snap to bar means that the tempo would change on the downbeat of the bar. So if we wanted it to change midstream, we would have to turn that off. So right now I'll just say, yeah, I want it to start at the beginning of the bar. And then we could select our meter and then what our click values are going to be. So if you want your click to be 8th note clicks, then you'll have to come down here and click 8th note, and then maybe we go to 3/4, and that'll be at measure 4. So I click OK, and now you can see that we've gone to 3/4 at the beginning of measure 4. Pro Tools automatically defaults to the key of C, 4/4 time signature, and 120 beats a minute. If you want to change those, there's a few ways you can do that. You can come up here and with the conductor track off or not highlighted blue, then you can just select the tempo and put in the tempo that you need for your session. You also remember that you can highlight it and then hit the T on the QWERTY keys, and it will keep track of what your tempo is as you're tapping in the tempo. If you want a tempo change during the piece of music, then you need to turn on or enable the conductor track. So maybe the beginning, the very first tempo, maybe we don't want it 120, maybe we want it something else, maybe 100 beats a minute, starting at measure 1. Now you can see the tempo was 100, and then if we wanted to change the tempo maybe at bar 3, then again we can add a tempo change here using the Add Tempo Change button, and maybe it goes to 110 at, we'll leave snap to bar on, so it should go right at bar 3 on the downbeat. And there you go. There's your tempo change. So it's important to know when you have various tempo changes in your session that you have this button enabled. Otherwise, it's just going to play at whatever manual tempo you have set right here. So I've got a piece here, not a piece, but some chords, C minor chord, and F minor, and C minor. And I've got the key signature ruler enabled. So what I'm going to do here is change this. It is really in C minor. So I'll select C minor, and then I'll say from the beginning of the piece, and I'll click OK. Now, for some reason, I wanted to transpose this. Say I wanted it to be in D minor, so up a major second. I can do that easily enough by just double-clicking here again and saying Edit Pitch Tracks, and now it's going to go from C minor to D minor. We'll say to the end of the session. And now it's going to transpose it up diatonically, editing the pitch tracks. So now we will have a D minor and a G minor chord. So you can have your key signatures affect your MIDI data as well if you select the Edit Pitched Tracks inside of the key change dialog box. Once you have your keyboard set up, you can actually set up your MIDI tracks in Pro Tools. Right here are the input and output selectors, MIDI input and output selectors for this MIDI track right now that we're looking at. You can see that the MIDI input selector defaults to all. In other words, it will receive all MIDI notes on all MIDI channels. We can also select here our MIDI output, where we would like Pro Tools to send the MIDI output once it's recorded. Right now, we're not going to worry about that because we don't have any virtual instruments set up. Now that we have selected our correct input, MIDI input, and we have plugged in our keyboard to our computer, we are ready to record enable this track. We can do that by just pressing the record enable button. Now you can see as I play the keyboard that this track indeed is receiving MIDI data. If you choose to record onto an instrument track, like this track here, you also need to set up your MIDI input and outputs as well. But remember that the instrument track is kind of a combination track between a MIDI track and an auxiliary input track. So it not only has MIDI inputs and outputs, but it also has auxiliary or audio inputs and outputs as well. So to set up our instrument track to receive MIDI, we need to actually display the area in this track that allows us to do that. So we can come up here to the View drop-down menu, go to the Mix window views, and select Instruments. As soon as we select Instruments, you'll see a new area has been added up here in the Mix window. This is our MIDI input selector, and this is our MIDI output selector, and this is our audio output. Now remember, we said that an instrument track was a combination of a MIDI track and an auxiliary input track, so it has both MIDI in and MIDI output capabilities, as well as the ability to output the audio so we can hear it from our virtual instrument. We can also access this data in the Edit window as well. We could go up to View and Edit window views and select Instruments as well, and you can see here that we also have that MIDI input and MIDI output information for this track. Once we have set our MIDI input and output paths, then we're actually ready to record. So we can record enable this track as well, and we could record MIDI data onto that instrument track. First of all, you can get to your MIDI options a variety of different places, your MIDI controls. You can select the transport window, so Window tab, Transport window, or use the shortcut Command 1. That will take you to the transport window where your MIDI tools are available. You can also turn those MIDI controls off or on by clicking on the transport window pop-up menu and selecting MIDI controls. You can also find these same controls in the edit window. For me, this is where I prefer to have them available. You can see I've already turned them on, but oftentimes your edit tools will look like this. You won't have your MIDI controls available here, so you'll want to go over here to the edit toolbar pop-up menu and add MIDI controls. Once you have these available, either in the edit toolbar or in the transport window, then you can configure them for your MIDI recording needs. The first MIDI control that I'd like to talk with you about is called the Wait for Note button. It's located right here. When that button is enabled or blue, when Pro Tools is in record mode, it will wait to start recording until it actually sees a note, hence the name Wait for Note. So even though we've got our track record enabled and we've clicked record, Pro Tools will not start recording until I send some type of MIDI message. So if I play a key on the keyboard, like I just did, then Pro Tools starts recording. The next button in the MIDI controls that we may want to look at or utilize when we're recording MIDI or audio data is the click track. We've talked about this already. As a reminder, you can turn the click on and off by clicking right on the button here, or also using 7 on your 10 keypad, or coming up here because it's something we can turn on and off, coming to the options window, and you can see the click on and off. That also highlights the blue metronome button as well. If you don't have a click track, remember you can turn a click track on or create one by coming up to track and create click track. And remember, that's just a mono auxiliary input track right here with a click instrument that's been placed on that track. We can also talk about the MIDI merge button. That's this third button right here. What that does is it allows you to overdub or add additional material to the MIDI track you have. So right now I've added or created this simple part. If I wanted to add some additional notes to this without deleting what I already have, then I would use the MIDI merge button. It's going to allow us to merge the existing MIDI data with new MIDI data. So I could do this kind of thing, hit record, and then add my new part here. Okay, so I've just added an additional part to this track. Now if I undo this and then go back here and turn MIDI merge off, as soon as I hit record, it's going to delete everything that I had. So it's going to completely erase the underlying data.